There are two decisions that will shape your financial life more than anything else. More than your salary. More than your savings rate. More than which stocks you pick. The first is what you drive. The second is where you live. And most people make both of them with almost no preparation, under pressure, surrounded by people who are professionally trained to get them to spend more than they should. Get the car wrong, and you're trapped in a depreciating asset draining your cash for 5 to 7 years. Get the housing wrong, and you're locked into a commitment that eats your flexibility, your savings rate, and your options for a decade or more. Get both wrong. You've just eliminated your ability to invest, build wealth, or take career risks during the exact years when compound interest would have done the most for you. Today, in the final episode of this series, we make sure neither of those things happens to you. Hey everybody, it's Billy. This is part 4, the final episode of Personal Finance 101. And if you've watched all 3 previous episodes, I want to say something before we dive in. You're already ahead. Most people never learn this stuff. They figure it out the hard way. Through a car deal they regret, a housing decision made under pressure, or a financial life that just never quite comes together. You chose differently, and today we're finishing what we started. In this episode, we're covering 3 things. First, how to buy a car without getting played, including the 5 dealership tactics that separate prepared buyers from easy targets. Second, the real rent versus buy framework. Because anyone who tells you one is always better than the other isn't giving you the full picture. And third, we're closing out this entire series with a final game plan that ties everything together. But I need to be upfront with you about something. The person sitting across from you at a car dealership has been trained. Literally trained in courses with scripts and role-playing exercises to get you to pay more than you should. And the bank that pre-approves you for a mortgage, their number and your number are 2 very different things. I'm going to show you exactly how both of those work and how to protect yourself. Stay until the end, because the series wrap-up is the part that turns everything we've covered into one clear, actionable plan. Let's go out strong. The 2 decisions nobody prepares you for. Here's the pattern I see over and over. Someone in their 20s or early 30s gets their first real salary. They feel like they've made it, and within the first 2 years, they make 2 huge purchases, a car and a housing commitment, with almost no financial education behind either one. The car purchase usually goes like this. They walk into a dealership, get overwhelmed by the experience, focus on the monthly payment because that's what the salesperson keeps talking about, and drive off in something they can technically afford on paper, but that's quietly draining their financial life for the next 5 to 7 years. The housing decision usually goes like this. They get pre-approved for a mortgage, hear a big number, assume that's their budget, and buy at or near the maximum. Then they spend the next 10 years house poor. Technically a homeowner, but with no margin for investing, no flexibility for career moves, and no breathing room when life gets expensive. Which it always does. Both of these decisions happen at exactly the wrong time. Right when compound interest would be doing the most for them if they had money to invest. A 25-year-old who overspends by $300 a month on a car and a house doesn't just lose $300 a month. They lose what that $300 would have become over 35 years of compound growth. And that number is genuinely staggering. So let's make sure you're the person who walks into these decisions prepared, not the person who looks back in 10 years wishing someone had told them. Buying a car the rules of the game. Car buying is one of the most common places young professionals lose money. Not because the car was too expensive, but because the financing and the dealership experience weren't handled well. Here's the first thing to understand. The car is one transaction. The financing is a completely separate transaction. Dealerships love it when you blur those together because it gives them more levers to pull. Your job is to keep them separate. Before you set foot on a lot, understand your financing options. Dealership financing is convenient. They arrange a loan through a lender they work with. But that convenience often comes with a higher interest rate because the dealer earns a cut. Bank or credit union loans are generally more competitive on rates. And here's the move that changes your entire dealership experience. Get pre-approved before you go. Call your bank or credit union, tell them you're buying a car, and get a pre-approval letter. This tells you exactly what budget you're working with, and it gives you genuine leverage. When you walk in with financing already arranged, you're a cash buyer in their eyes. That's a completely different negotiation. Two numbers to watch: the interest rate. Even a 2% difference matters over a 5-year loan. And the loan term. A longer term means lower monthly payments but way more total interest. A 72-month loan on a $25,000 car at 8% means nearly $7,000 in interest alone. A 48-month term saves you thousands. Run the numbers. Don't just look at the monthly payment. Now, the 5 dealership tactics. Think of buying a car like a game. Once you know the rules, you can't be played. Tactic 1. Baits and switch. A dealership advertises an eye-catching price to get you through the door. When you arrive, that car is just sold or unavailable, and the salesperson pivots you to something more expensive. If you show up for a specific advertised vehicle and it's mysteriously gone, walk out. That's the test. Tactic 2. Hidden fees. The advertised price looks great. Then the paperwork arrives with documentation fees, dealer prep fees, market adjustment fees, nitrogen tire inflation fees. Yes, that's real. Always ask for a complete breakdown of every single fee before you agree to anything. Some are standard and negotiable. Others are pure padding. Push back or walk. Tactic 3. The monthly payment trick. This is the most common and the most expensive. The salesperson focuses your attention on the monthly payment instead of the total price. We can get you into this car for just $399 a month. Sounds great. Until you realize the loan runs 72 months and you're paying $28,700 for a $24,000 car. Always negotiate the out-the-door price first. The monthly payment is just a result of that number combined with the loan terms. Never let the conversation stay on monthly payments alone. Tactic 4. The trade-in trap. If you're trading in your current car, the dealership may lowball your trade-in value and make up for it with a seemingly better deal on the new car, or vice versa. Before you go, look up your car's trade-in value on Kelley Blue Book or Edmunds. Know your number. Negotiate the new car price separately from the trade-in. 2 different transactions. Keep them that way. Tactic 5. High-pressure urgency. This deal is only good today. Someone else is looking at this car right now. I need to check with my manager. Every single one of these is manufactured pressure designed to stop you from thinking clearly. A good deal today is a good deal tomorrow. If a salesperson is rushing you, that's a red flag, not a reason to sign. Take your time. Sleep on it. Set your total budget before you go, including insurance, fuel, registration, and maintenance. Research reliability and resale value. If you're buying used, pull a vehicle history report through Carfax. And always test drive. Walk in prepared, keep the transactions separate, and refuse to let urgency or charm rush you into a 5-year regret. Rent versus buy the real framework. Now let's talk about the biggest financial decision most people will ever make: housing. Should you rent or should you buy? My honest answer: it depends. And anyone who tells you definitively that one is always better isn't giving you the full picture. What matters is your specific situation. Let's build the real framework. The case for renting: lower upfront costs, a security deposit, and first month's rent versus a house deposit of 5 to 20%. On a $350,000 home, that's $17,500 to $70,000 just to get in the door before closing costs add another 2 to 5%. When you rent, you're not responsible for property taxes, repairs, or maintenance. If your life changes, new job, new city, new relationship, you can move. Flexibility has real financial value, especially in your 20s and 30s. The honest downside: rent builds you nothing. Every payment is gone. You accumulate no ownership stake in the property. And over time, rent tends to rise, sometimes significantly. And you have almost no control over when or how much. You could budget perfectly, live within your means, and still find yourself priced out of your own neighborhood because your landlord decided to raise the rent by 15%. That uncertainty is the real cost of renting. And it's a cost that grows the longer you stay in the same market. The case for buying. Your mortgage builds equity, your ownership stake in the property. Every payment chips away at the loan balance, and over time, you own more and more of the asset outright. If the property appreciates in value, meaning it becomes worth more over time, that gain belongs to you. When you sell, the difference between what you owe and what it's worth is real money in your pocket. Homeowners also get tax advantages renters don't, including potential deductions on mortgage interest and property taxes, which can meaningfully reduce your annual tax bill. There's also a psychological benefit nobody talks about. Owning a home gives many people a sense of stability and control over their environment that renting simply can't match. You can renovate, you can paint the walls, you can plant a garden. You're not waiting for a landlord's permission to make the space yours. For some people, that emotional security is worth the financial trade-offs, but the costs are real. Maintenance, repairs, property taxes, homeowners insurance, potentially HOA fees. Budget roughly 1% of the home's value per year for upkeep. On a $350,000 home, that's nearly $300 extra per month that doesn't exist in a rent equation. 4 questions to ask yourself honestly. 1. How long am I staying? Buying usually needs at least 5 years to beat renting once transaction costs are factored in. Moving in 2 or 3 years? Rent. 2. Can I afford the full cost, not just the mortgage? Everything. Use a mortgage calculator and compare the real number to your rent. And here's the critical reframe. The house you can't afford is the one the bank says you can. The bank's pre-approval is the maximum they'll lend you. It is not the maximum you can comfortably live with. The bank doesn't know you want kids. It doesn't factor in your car payment or your desire to still invest, still travel, still have a life. Your real number is probably 20 to 30% below what the bank approves. 3. Where is my life headed? Job stability, career mobility, relationship plans. All real inputs. Uncertainty is a legitimate reason to wait. 4. What does the local market look like? In some cities, renting is dramatically cheaper. In others, buying makes sense quickly. Do the local maths. Bottom line, renting is not throwing money away. It's paying for flexibility. Buying is not always building wealth. It's a commitment with costs and risks. The right answer is the one that fits your situation right now. Neither choice is a failure. Making it on purpose is what matters. The complete game plan. 4 episodes. And if you've watched all of them, here's what you now have that most people don't. A budgeting system. The 50-30-20 rule. And smart goals that turn vague wishes into real, trackable plans with deadlines and weekly checkpoints. An understanding of credit and debt. The difference between installment and revolving, how interest works against you, and 2 proven strategies to escape the cycle. Insurance protection you actually understand. Health, auto, renters, life, disability. And the knowledge to review it annually so you're never caught off guard. Compound interest working quietly in the background through a 401k and a Roth IRA, capturing your employer match and building tax-advantaged wealth while you sleep. Tax knowledge. Progressive brackets, deductions, credits. That stops you from overpaying the government out of ignorance. A bank chosen deliberately instead of defaulted into. And now, the ability to handle the 2 biggest purchases of your adult life without getting manipulated. That's not a collection of random tips. That's a complete financial operating system. Budget, goals, credit, debt, insurance, investing, retirement, taxes, banking, cars, housing. Every major piece of your financial life covered. 2 people the same age, same salary, same city. One of them has these systems. The other doesn't. Come back in 10 years and tell me who has options. Tell me who's sleeping through the night. Tell me who has the freedom to say no to a job they hate, yes to an opportunity that excites them, and not yet to a purchase that would set them back. Tell me who's free. That gap between them isn't about talent or luck or who earns more. It's about information. And what you do with it, you now have the information. What you do with it starts today. 3 final takeaways from this last episode. Car buying is a game with rules. Learn them before you play. Get pre-approved for financing. Negotiate the total out-the-door price instead of the monthly payment. Know your trade-in value before you walk in, and watch for the 5 tactics: bait and switch, hidden fees, the monthly payment trick, the trade-in trap, and manufactured urgency. Walk in prepared, and you'll walk out in control. The rent versus buy decision is personal, not universal. Ask how long you're staying, whether you can genuinely afford the full cost of ownership, where your life is headed in the next 5 years, and what the local market is telling you. And remember the single most important reframe in this entire episode. The bank's number is not your number. The bank tells you the maximum they'll lend. Your real number, the one that lets you invest, live, and breathe, is probably 20 to 30% lower. Trust your budget, not the bank's approval letter. And finally, there is no perfect financial decision. There never has been. There's only an informed one. The advantage always goes to the person who did the homework before they sat down at the table. That's what this entire 4-part series has been about. Not perfection. Preparation. Financial literacy isn't a destination. It's a practice. And you've just completed a foundation that most adults spend their entire lives wishing they had. Keep going. Keep building. Keep making every financial decision on purpose, not by accident. You've earned this. Now use it. I'm Billy. And I probably spend too much time thinking about why the 2 financial decisions that shape most people's entire adult lives are also the 2 where they walk in with the least preparation and the most pressure. And what it costs a person when nobody shows them the rules before the game starts. If that just landed somewhere real, subscribe. Because that's exactly what we dig into here.